Good evening. We're studying the book of Shmuel I, and we are in the beginning of chapter 30. Just by a little bit of overview of where we stand, the last four chapters are not. One second. What? It's someone here that's making such noise. I don't know. Let me just mute. All right. The last four chapters are not working in chronological order. They're not describing exactly what happened. At specific times, because we're dealing with two tracks. We're dealing with a track of what happened to Saul, and a parallel track of what happened to David HaMelech. So in chapter 28, we ended up stating chapter 28 was about Saul, and basically stating that tomorrow Saul is going to be dying, is going to be fighting a war, and he's going to die. So that's how chapter 28 ends. He actually dies on chapter 31, which is the next chapter. In between, we have two chapters, 29 and 30, which is the second track of what happened to David. So the background of what's going on is that there is a war is looming. The Philistines are set to attack a weak tribe of the Jewish people from the north, the northern Israel, the tribe of Issachar. They're ready to attack around there, and the Israeli army is gathering to try to fight them off. I'll tell you a secret: we're going to lose this war. After 5 successful wars with the Philistines, this one we're going to lose, and we're going to lose the king as well. But this is not the topic of today's discussion. This is what will happen in a couple of chapters. Where we are now is David. Few chapters ago, decided to leave the land of Israel to go to leave the borders of Israel. He's still in the official biblical borders of the land of Israel, but it's not under Israeli control, and not under Jewish control. He's under the control of the Philistines, and he ran away from Israel because it was miserable there. He had to run away for his life, as we all know. Saul was chasing him day and night, trying to catch him, to kill him, to whatever. It was confusing what exactly he wanted from him, but he ended up running away. With him ran his militia, his people that started as a bunch of misfits, but as we will see soon, turn out to be a very outstanding bunch of guys that mixed in with the misfits. And we will see exactly who were there towards the end of chapter 30, who was within those in that bunch. So David ran to the Philistines, and he got an autonomy of sorts by the king of the Philistines, Achish. He got an autonomy in a place called Ziklag. Ziklag was a town in the southern part of their territory, which is just about between Gaza today, nowadays Gaza and Beersheba, smack in the middle, a place called Ziklag. Not inhabited today in any that I know of. There are some ruins over there, but that was the place. So he got that town, and that was the southern part, the southern border of the Philistines. From there, he was there about 4 months, a little short of 4 months, and he ran from there all operation to fight the tribes around, the tribes that has a long accounting, an open exchange with the Jewish people. They were harassing us. They were fighting us. So he used that time while he's outside of the land of Israel. He doesn't need to launch an attack from within Israel. He was right outside of the borders. He had his people. He had an autonomy, and he would go around and launch battles against them. The stuff that he took from them, the booty, he would, generally speaking, not kill the people. He would just punish them for and take back a whole bunch of stuff that they took from the Jewish people throughout the years, throughout the wars. So he would take it away, and for now he would give it to Achish. Achish was his guardian, so to speak. He put him under his wings. Achish, the king of the Philistines, so he would pay him by giving him all the booties, and Achish was very happy that he got finally someone who can wage a war and win and get something out of it. It's a good business. He was able to get a lot of money from him. He was happy with him. So when the war against the Jews started, or about to start in the north, David naturally was going with Achish. Achish wanted David to join him and to be part of the war and to fight side by side against. David will fight against his brethren, against Saul and his army, thinking that he got the ace now. The same guy that killed Goliath a couple of years ago now switched sides and now is with us, the Philistines thought, and he will go against Saul. Great ace. The Philistines, the other Philistines, the heads of the army, there's five majors, generals that were running the other cities. They didn't have another king, but they had 5 generals, four other generals, and they were very much against David participating in the war because they didn't trust him. They were smart. They knew that David is not there suddenly switching sides and suddenly going to be killing his own Jewish people. It didn't sound right to them, and they were very much against it. And they told Achish, it's either you keep David and then you're not with us, or you let David go and stay with us and fight with us. Achish had no choice, and he basically sent David back home to Ziklag, and told him that he's sorry, he trusts him very much, he's the best guy, but the other Philistines don't trust him, therefore they cannot fight together. Okay, David goes back to Ziklag. That's where we find ourselves in chapter 30. ויהי בבוא דוד ואנשיו ציקלג ביום השלישי והעמלקים פשטו על הנגב ועל ציקלג ויכו את ציקלג ויצרפו אותה באש. So what happened here? What happened here is that all of the Philistines' army was in the north, trying to wage a war against the Jewish people. So every able man was in the north. We know that the Philistines were their territory was more to the south, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Kiryat Gat, that area. And because all of the able men were up in the north, they were left without protection. So when you're left without protection, the neighbors, who are very fine neighbors, right away come to invade and come back to take what the feel is theirs. David HaMelech was in the past few months schmeicing them, hitting them very, very hard, and taking their a lot of booty from them and handing it over to Achish. Achish had it in his in his palace or in his city, collecting all of that, and those people felt that it's a good time now that the army, the protection is gone. Let's go get it back. So they went, and it's not only that they went to take their stuff and go home. They might as well. They got a whole bunch of other booty that does not belong to them. It didn't belong to them to begin with. So they went pashtu el Negev. So on the third day, David HaMelech and his people disappeared from Tziklag, from that area, for 3 days. They went up. It took them 1 day to go north, another day to negotiate with Achish whether to stay or not, and the very next day to go down back. When they were kicked out, they sent back home. So 3 days. During these 3 days, they came and they found the place in ruins, literally. The Amalekites, who were those tribes that didn't have much of a territory, they just were on nomads and on horses, and they would go and invade places, very much like the Cossacks type. They would go and they invaded the Negev. The Negev was north of where David was. So the land, as long as David was there, protecting the southern border of the Philistines, nobody dared to cross and go attack the Philistines. And each one of their cities was anyway protected by their army, which is now also north. So the Amalekites went all the way to the northern part of the Philistines area, and collected, attacked all those cities that didn't have protection, and took the stuff away. When they got to Tziklag, which is where David was parked, it was his autonomy, that his city, Tziklag, they gave a little bit of extra TLC, and they burned it down. They hit it bad. They didn't just went and took the stuff and left everything, the houses. They burned the whole place down to the ground. And behind the people, the militia, David's militia, when they went, when they were going up to the north to try to fight with the Philistines, they didn't go with their women. They didn't go with their kids. They left the women and children behind in Tziklag, thinking that they'll be safe, for those few days that they're going to go to the war, until things going to be, they'll figure out what will happen. They figured they will be safe, because that's what the Philistines did. The Philistines left also their women and children and went up to the war. So when the Amalekites invaded that section and burned down Tziklag, Vayishbu et anashim asher ba, so they took all the women that were in that town of Tziklag, mikaton ve'ad gadol, from young to old, lo imitu ish. They did not, very, very against their nature, very, very much against what they usually do, where they would go to places and they would kill the people who were there. Here they didn't. They burned down the place, and they didn't kill anyone. They just took them all as prisoners of war. It was obvious that they were retaliating for the past 4 months where David was hitting them, and they decided they're going to utilize or squeeze as the last cent from this opportunity. And they will take the people, either use them as slaves or sell them as slaves, both the children and the women. Why kill them? Why use a bullet? If they can get them, put them to good use. So that's the status. That's what's awaiting David when he is coming down from the northern of Israel, northern Israel, where he was sent away. So vayavo David ve'anashav el ha'ir. So David and his people come to the city. V'ines rufa ba'esh, and they see that the place is totally burned down to the ground. V'neshehem uvnehem uvnotehem nishbu, and their women and their boys, the kids, boys and girls, were taken prisoners. How did they know that they were taken prisoners? It's obvious. They didn't see any dead body over there, right? They came to the place, The place is burned down. They didn't see anything in the rubble that looks suspicious, that looks like that belongs to them in terms of people. And so that is a smack in the face that David didn't really expect, because in his eyes he thought that God is with him, that he thought that he's doing the right thing. He thought that he had to run away from Israel because he came very close to arm length from Saul once and twice, and he knew that the miracles don't keep happening, and if he's not going to take care of himself and get out of town, he might not have a third opportunity. So he thought that God is with him, and that's what he needs to do. He was, because he was a prophet, he had some open communication. He didn't know that he did something wrong, and we don't know that he did something wrong, except that this was a test. This was a very, very terrible, hard test. This is described in the commentaries is the worst point in David's life thus far. The worst. It was not, when he was standing in front of Goliath, might have been fear. When he was trying to escape Saul, it was a few close calls. When he escaped the city of Nov, right before it was completely destroyed by Saul. All of that was terrible, but this was devastating, because he finally settled down a little bit. He got married. He got married with 2 women. And his people trusted him. And now they came back, and within 3 days, they lost everything. Everything that they had, everything that they were able to settle in Ziklag for 4 months, it was all burned down, and all of his women and children are gone. Vayavo David ve'anashav, we read that. Vayisa David ve'am asher ito et kulam vayifku. So David started, he is near giving up. He's totally devastated, and he starts crying. He sort of collapsed to the floor and starts crying. Ad asher en ba'em koach livkot. And all of the people that with him saw that their leader is falling apart, literally falling apart. They also, joined, and they fell apart together. And they cried and cried and cried until they didn't have strength to cry. Can you imagine? Can you imagine such devastation, such helplessness? Helplessness. I mean, they lost all hope. What are they going to fight for? When they were in their land, okay, so we'll fight for the people, for the land.
I have screen, but I don't have any sound. How do I get sound?
All right, I don't know how you get sound. So people, they were really, really, really devastated. So they saw the place was, they lost everything, and they cried until they didn't have any more strength to cry. Ushtei neshei David nishbu, Achinoam Israelit v'avi. 1 second, I'm sorry. Let's just, all right, good. So Achinoam Israelit v'Avigail eshet Naval Carmeli. So he had 2 wives, and they were both taken. Now we know that Avigail was a prophetess, was one of the 7 prophetess that we had in our history. Sarah, Esther, Huldah, all big names, and she's one of them. So despite of the fact, and so she didn't have any, she was a complete wholesome person. She didn't have anything on her. She didn't have any rap sheet or sins or anything that needed, that required that kind of punishment. But nonetheless, she got it. And so we see many times that when there is a problem in the world, even good people who don't have any reason to be punished are being punished or part of the punishment, and it's a test and it's isurim, and it's a whole discussion in the commentaries. What does it mean and why and how? But the bottom line is they were not killed, and they ended up also not being violated, which was one of the main concerns that David and his people had, that the women will be violated. Obviously, very common in those days, very common nowadays too when you have such situations. But very soon after this happened, so they were devastated, they cried, David and his people. Vatetzar leDavid meod, and David realized that he is now in a much bigger pickle, so to speak, because ki amru ha'am lesaklo. It's not only that he lost his wives. It's not only that he lost all of his people lost their wives. It's not that they lost their shelter. It was burned down to the ground. His people are rebelling now. You are a leader. It was your idea. What kind of a stupid idea was that to leave the land of Israel? What kind of idea was that to attack all the tribes around? What kind of an idea is that to leave the town without protection and to go fight for some foreign king against ourselves? I mean, there are so many concerns, and if you had a debate at that moment, I don't know who would win. So the people wanted to stone him. His own people who he took, who attached themselves to him, and he taught them and supported them, and they supported him, and they were together. They're in it together. And now he felt that he's totally alone, that his people are against him. Again, these are all tests that God put David through in order to harden him, in order to make sure that he can lead the Jewish people, because in a day or two, Saul is going to be dead, and David is it. So it's like on the verge of becoming a king, and he is in such terrible shape right now. His own people don't, not only the people of Israel, as we learned several times before, the people in the land of Israel didn't have much faith in him. They thought that he is working for himself. There was a lot of propaganda. The people around Saul who saw that Saul is trying to, they didn't like David, because David was a rising star that just came like that. So they were bad-mouthing him. And when Saul was going against him, it was a perfect opportunity to badmouth him around town. And all of the Jewish people and all of the New York Times at the time would be publishing first page articles against David HaMelech every other day. So the people in Israel didn't have good feeling about him. And now the people who ran away from Israel also want to stone him. Terrible situation. כי מרה נפש כל העם איש על בניו ועל בנותיו ויתחזק דוד בהשם אלוקיו, because everybody is really were against him in a terrible way, and all the people were worried about their sons and their daughters. And we're mentioning sons. One second. Noise again.
Well on speaker. And we're listening to Dror.
Yes, you are. 1 second. All right. So when they're writing Banav, as you see here on the screen, when you see everybody was upset about their sons and daughters, the sons is written without a yud, missing a letter, because they worried about their sons less than they worried about their daughters. As we said before, it's easy for women to be in this kind of a situation is much more difficult than for a boy. However, David HaMelech, David, who wasn't a melech yet, but David became very vayitchazek David b'Hashem Elokav. He became very, very believer and very strong, believing in God. And I want to read to you from a chapter that he wrote at the time that described exactly what was happening, and you will recognize it because soon we're going to be saying it every day. LeDavid Hashem ori v'ishi. You know, God, the David is crying to God, you are my light, you are my savior. I'm not going to be afraid from anyone. Bikrov alai meriim, when those who are my enemies, those who are against me, are close to me, and they're trying to eat my flesh, le'echol et psari. When to eat my flesh, it says that a husband and a wife becomes one. So they like vayu lebasar echad, they become one flesh, one body. And now my flesh is David says is being eaten because his wives were taken away as hostages. So by the enemies, and they are tripping me, etc. Now, what does it say at the end? And the whole describes how terrible the situation is, but he is strong and believe in God nonetheless. And we're finishing the chapter 27. Kavel Hashem chazak ve'ametz libecha ve'kavel Hashem. You should hope for God, and you should strengthen your heart, and you should hope for God. Okay, hope for the redemption of God. Twice kavet, twice hope. I heard a story 2 days ago about a gentleman by the name of I think Adler, maybe Yosef, I forgot his first name, Adler. He was he passed away last Shabbos. He was a survivor, a Holocaust survivor, and he was a Holocaust survivor, and he was attached to what's called the agriculture commando. The agriculture commando. What does it mean, the agriculture commando? He was sent every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. They would wake up, a bunch of them would line up in the entrance of Auschwitz, where it says Arbeit macht frei, right? That sign. He said it's right under that sign. They were hanging around, and they were taken. They were walking to the place to some field, and they were working, and then they came back. In that hour of the morning in the winter in Auschwitz, it was very, very cold, and all they had is the shirt on their back, which was not even a good quality shirt. So what happened is he was standing there. He was 16, and a 40-year-old guy comes to him and asks him about this pasuk that we just read. Kavel Hashem chazak v'yametz libecha ve'kavel Hashem. Why does it say kavel Hashem? You should hope for God twice. Why not once? So he told him, because when you're standing in this situation like you are right now, in Auschwitz, at 4 o'clock in the morning, there is no hope. There is nothing to look forward to. You're working day and night, and you should strengthen your heart and believe in God again and again and again. He said that those 5 minutes that he heard that he spent with that man standing there in the agriculture commando in the gates of Auschwitz, that's what carried him throughout the years of the war until he was saved. He ended up coming to Ashdod and raising a family, was a head of a kihila, of a community over there. He died with 92 years of age last Shabbos. So this is the chapter that David wrote at that moment. David was authoring LeDavid Hashem ori v'ishi at that moment to describe the devastation and nonetheless the strength and the hope and the trust that he had in God. We are taking those words of David HaMelech and saying it every year throughout Chodesh Elul and most of Tishrei. During the high holidays, in the days that are before the high holidays, and during the high holidays, we are saying those. Why are we saying those? Because we are basically in the same situation where our enemies, internal and external, are tripping us, and we are trying to work our way towards the high holidays, towards Rosh Hashanah, to do tshuva, to repent, and we have struggles, and the struggles are inner struggles and external struggles, but nonetheless we are trusting that God is going to be with us. So Imagine the devastation that David HaMelech was in. Imagine the devastation that man was in Auschwitz. And imagine what we are saying every year on an Elul morning. That is the gravity of the situation when it comes to Elul. That's just as an aside. Vayomer David el Eviatar. So being trusting in God fully and wholly, and David knows that just sitting there and doing nothing ain't going to get him anywhere. So Vayomer David el Eviatar HaKohen ben Achimelech. So Eviatar HaKohen was the sole survivor of the city of Nov, was the sole survivor of the massacre that Saul launched on that city because they helped supposedly David destroy them all. Eviatar ran away with, he was the son of the Kohen Gadol at the time, Achimelech, and he ran away with the breastplates and joined David and was following David for a few months. And he ended up with him outside of Israel where he was right now. Agisha li ha'efod vayagesh Eviatar et ha'efod el David. So he tells him, David is telling him, okay, take out the breastplate, just give it to me. We need to ask questions. Now, we spoke several times in the past on how, what's going on with the what's the process, what's the procedure of asking the breastplates, asking God through the breastplate. So the procedure is very involved, and it takes time. It's not like typing on Google and pressing enter. It's involved. The person has to be in a right frame of mind. They have to be in a itbonenut, meditation. It's not a quick answer. And many times there is no answer. David, however, didn't have much time here. Why? Because his wives and all of the other women and children were taken captive, and as we speak, they're walking another step and another step and another step away from Tziklag, away from where he was. So he needed to chase them and find them really quickly. So he didn't have time, and this is where we see why this was not a punishment, it was a test. Because God was not leaving him hanging. God obviously created this situation, so he's drawing from David this immense belief, immense kavel Hashem, chazak v'yametz libecha, strong belief in God. And when David responds, when David reacts and does that, God responds. So David didn't follow procedure. He didn't just try slowly and doing the questioning according to procedure. One of the ideas with the breastplates, the procedure was that you have to ask one question at a time. You cannot ask a series of questions. And we see that several times when Saul was impatient and asked multiple questions, he got answers only on one question at a time. He wasn't getting an answer about multiple questions. But David here got multiple answers. Vayish'al David ba'Hashem lemor. So David right away asked, Erdof achrei hagud hazeh ha'asigenu. Should I chase them and will I get them? Will I be able to catch them? Vayomer lo redof ki asek tasig va'atzel tatzil. So God gives him, he asked two questions, he got three answers. He said lo redof yeh, go chase. Why? Ki asek tasig, because you're going to get them, you're going to reach them, you're going to catch them. Va'atzel tatzil, and you're going to also save all of the people that were taken captive. So we see that there is a tremendous amount of response and support from Hashem to David in this terrible situation. Vayelech David hu ו600 איש אשר איתו ויבוא עד נחל הבשור והנותרים עמדו. Oh, so here we have already, starting. So David goes with the 600 people that with him. He started many months ago, probably a year and a half ago, with 400 people who would follow him as he was running away from Saul. Then when we got to a place of Kehila, he had 500 people. Now we have already 600 people. So people continue to join the forces with David HaMelech, and we will see again, probably a little later, we will see who those people were. So he goes with those people and he goes to Nachal HaBesor. Where is Nachal HaBesor? Nachal HaBesor is a very long stream, it's not a river, it's a Nachal, smaller stream than a river, but it's very long. It's 80 kilometers long, very, very long. And it has water even nowadays, and it's a very popular place to go visit and to go hiking, unless you have all kinds of fiery balloons that are falling there and burning it down, which happened as well. But Nachal HaBesor, it's an area that's very, very known nowadays. So he got there. So Vayelech, what does it mean Vayelech? He walked. So after he realized the urgency, and he's asking the breastplate, and the breastplate responding to him above and beyond, out of order, answering, yes, 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 go, chase, he's walking. He's not running. You know, when somebody's trying to chase, you know, you step on the bread, you step on the gas, right? No, he was walking. Why was he walking? Because he realized that he needs to know where to go. Where is he gonna chase? He needs to follow the footsteps. So he would look for clues. He would look like, you know, the how do you call those like the Bedouins in the Israeli army? They can see gashashim, no? They can, what? No, they're able to see tracks, things that normal humans don't see on the ground. On the ground, they're able to see and smell and really know where to go and see where people are heading. So they were very, very. He was looking for those clues. So he took time. So he was walking, and 600 people walked with him. And then they arrived at Nachal HaBesor, which is not far away from Tziklag. And over there, he found the traces. He found the tracks, and he was ready to now run and, you know, chase them at a faster pace. Vanotarim amadu. However, not everybody was so enthusiastic about it. They, as we saw, they lost faith. They lost their oomph. They lost their hope. So 200 of the 600 men gave up and said, you know what? We followed you all this time and it didn't get us far. You know, we're not better off. So they decided to stand. So in Nachal HaBesor, where there is water, they just stood and they refused to continue, which under normal circumstances in a normal army with a normal king, they would be shot on the spot. You know, what do you mean a platoon that doesn't want to fight in the middle? But David HaMelech will see he's not a king yet, and he's very humble, and he's treating them in a very, very smart and respectful way. So Vayirdof David hu v'arbamot ish. So before we said there were 600. Now we said that David is now chasing, and there are 400 people. So where are the 200? The 200 people were those guys that decided that they don't want to fight. Vayamdu 200 ish. Okay. Vayamdu 200 ish asher pigru me'avor et Nachal HaBesor. So, and the 200 people that didn't want to cross that Nachal HaBesor, that stream of water of Besor, they just we're not going. You know, I'm sorry, we're standing here. So what does David do? We'll see it later. David does not punish them, does not go against them, does not try to talk them into it. He understands why they arrived at this kind of a feeling, and he's giving them some of his stuff so he can chase faster, he can chase lighter. So he leaves some of his stuff behind, you know, the heavy equipment that he doesn't need for that chase. He leaves with those 4 people and tell them, stay here, don't move, guard those things, I'll be back. I understand, don't fight, okay, but I'll be back. And they do, they listen and they're staying there. So David is now chasing with 400 people, וימצאו איש מצרי בשדה. And they found, as they're walking, they found an Egyptian man in the field. Okay? So when someone chased to find their wives and children, and they're in a rush, what do? Naturally they should ignore him, but not when a Jewish army does that. ויקחו אותו אל דוד. So they found that man, and that man was not responsive. He was visibly sick. He was visibly not able to really give them any information. He was half dead, basically, because he was left, as we will see in a second, he was left to die. He was sick, and his owner, he was a slave, he was an Egyptian slave, and his owner didn't want to take care of him. He was sick, so you have corona, seid mir gesinnt, you leave him in the field to die, and he doesn't care about him. But when a Jewish army passes through and sees someone who's not obviously part of us, they took him. ויקחו אותו אל דוד. Again, without ויתנו לו לחם ויאכל וישקו מים, and they gave him bread and they gave him water. The man still does not respond. The man is still very, very sick, and they realize that it's not just he's in a serious condition. So they gave him some of the most precious food that they have. ויתנו לו פלח דבלה ושני צימוקים. So they gave him a little bit of a sugar kick, a sugar rush, something to help him. What? Something to energize him. They had just a sliver of a fig, and two raisins and a sliver of a fig. They didn't have much, because they came down. They were kicked away from the army, and they came down to Ziklag, and Ziklag had nothing because everything was burned down. So they were left with nothing. They have a little bit of water and loaves of bread, which was easier to carry, but in terms of real quality food, they had very little. So, but because they see the man in need, so they gave him the share. ויאכל ותשב רוחו אליו. So he ate and he came to himself, and now the pasuk is explaining what was happening. כי לא אכל לחם ולא שתה מים 3 ימים ו3 לילות. He didn't eat and didn't drink for 3 days and 3 nights. Very, very terrible situation. So now that he came to himself, they sort of got him to a point where he can talk. ויאמר לו דוד למי אתה? So ואי מזה אתה? So David is asking him, who are you and where you, what side are you on? Because it's in an area that has many different tribes and many different types of people. You have the Jews, and you have Philistines, and you have Amalekites, and you have Egyptians, and you have several other tribes, as we saw a couple of weeks ago. And so who are you? So Vayomer now I'm an Egyptian boy, Eved Lish Amaleki, and I'm a servant of an Amalekite. Vayazveni Adoni, and my owner abandoned me. Ki chaliti hayom shlosha, because I was 3 days ago today, three days ago now, I became sick, so he abandoned me. And he continues to talk and give information. He was not asked, but he's giving very valuable information. And he tells them, אנחנו פשטנו נגב הקריטי ועל אשר יהודה ועל נגב קלה ואת צקלג סבבנו באש. He said, I was part of the group that invaded the plains of the Crete, the Cretes, where the Philistines were from Crete, from the island of Crete in Greece. So it's called Negev Akriti, the place of the Cretes. And we also invaded parts of Judah, and we also invaded part of the land of Kalev, which is near Hebron. So he got he was promised, as part of, for good behavior as a spy, he got a special, bigger section. And he burned down, and we burned out the city of Ziklag. So now they have someone that actually was there and I think we are davening, so we'll talk later. Thank you, guys.
Hallelujah. Yiskara, Viskara, Shemay Rabbah.
Here it says that they gave him 2 clusters of raisins and
2
2
raisins.
cakes of figs.
Pelach Tvila, no, it's wrong. Pelach Tvila, 1, 3 raisins.